Well, how do you analyze a property for cash flow? How do we analyze this to see if this is really truly going to be a good rental? Because this is titled, every house will rent, but that doesn't mean that every house is a good rental. And honestly, if you put the wrong house in your rental portfolio, you can do enormous damage to your portfolio if you've made some bad assumptions. If you put the wrong property in the portfolio, you can actually lose money. And what are we accumulating houses for? What is the number one overriding reason that we are buying properties? And that's to make money. And it's typically, we always want cash flow. If you can't get cash flow, what are we doing this for? Not only that, but cash flow is going to give you a benchmark so that you know where you are in the valuations. So let's just think this through. So when you get cash flow, the cash flow must justify the purchase price. Now, there are several places here in Phoenix and in your town that's called the high rent district. They're the most expensive homes in the area. They're the greatest places to live. They're the most expensive homes. That often means that they're not very good rentals, and that the rental market that you're looking at probably is not going to support the price. So one of the number one rules that you have to have is that the price has to be justified by how much rent you can get. And of course, it's not just the rent amount, it's the net rent amount. So yes, you may get a big dollar for something in like Scottsdale or Paradise Valley here, but maybe the taxes and the homeowner association is going to be so prohibitive that it doesn't make sense to lease the property. So we have a form to do that. We're going to do some calculations today to decide if this is something that makes sense. So let's keep in mind there are also ratios. So there are decisions that people make. Are we going to rent a house or are we going to buy a house? And oftentimes there's a difference. Now, in the bubble years, I often tell this story because I had two identical properties right next door to each other in McDowell Mountain Ranch in Scottsdale. So they were the same builder, the same floor plan, right next door to each other. They were also upgraded exactly the same. I sold one of them. The house payment during the bubble for the buyer was $3,500 a month. That's what it cost them to buy the house, was $3,500. I rented that exact same house for $1,495 a month, right next door. It was a duplicate. So that's how you absolutely positively know that there is no more value left in the marketplace when there's so much better for you to rent than to buy, which means that the market is out of sync. There's something wrong with it. That's called the rent to own ratio. So if it's more advantageous to buy a property, that's what you should be looking at doing. You should be buying those properties. Typically, you're going to find that to rent and to own are pretty close to each other. They may fluctuate up and down a little bit, but they're generally fairly, very close. Now, of course, when you go to rent to own, that means you've got to put there, or when you're owning, you have to go ahead and put the down payment. You have to put your credit on the line. You have to make a long-term decision that we're going to own this property because selling is fairly expensive. And of course, there is a cost to that. So that fluctuates almost daily sometimes with interest rates. But when you own versus you rent, that monthly payment should be fairly close to do that. Now, if it's out of whack like it is a little bit today, it's actually cheaper to buy a place than it is to own a place. So that's telling us that the market is not overvalued. It's actually undervalued, which really surprises a lot of people because they think, well, the prices have gone up so significantly. But that's the fact. They have gone up fairly significantly, but they're still justifying the rent. So there's also other questions that come into play. So there's like the age of the properties. So when you're buying these properties, you have to understand that 0 to 5, So if you buy a new house, it's 0 to 5 years old. It's the greatest appreciation a building's going to see. But you also have to put in window treatments. You also have to put in landscape, which is probably most people don't factor into their equations. And when you're 0 to 5, there's very, very little in the way of repairs that have to be done because most of them are either new or maybe still under warranty. Now, when you get into purchasing a property that's like 13, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, well, the systems are breaking down. The systems are really need to be repaired. So when we look at these, you have to assume that, look, if it's 20 years old, that means the air conditioner probably is getting at the end of its useful life. So we have to start thinking, well, if I'm not replacing an air conditioner this year, probably within the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. And of course, replacing one air conditioner is fairly expensive. If it's a big house, maybe there's 2 or 3. If the property is getting to be older than 20 years old, 21, 22 years old, you have to start thinking of roof issues. So if it's 21 or 22 or 23 years old, you have to say, well, if it's leaking, it can be repaired, but it's eventually going to need to be replaced. And of course, that's fairly expensive. Now, what happens when you replace the air conditioner and the roof? They're good for another 15, 20, 25 years, but nonetheless, the expense comes into 1 year. So whenever it happens, you just have to be able to pay for it. So if you're buying a property that's 18 or 19 years old and it's going to be a rental, you have to know that if I'm going to hold it for 4 or 5 years, there's a pretty good possibility I might be replacing a air conditioner. So we have to factor that into our equations. We either have to make sure we have a home warranty that's going to cover the air conditioner, or we have to start escrowing for that. Same with the roof. So if the roof is 25 years old, we know that it's at the end of its useful life and it needs to be replaced. So if it's not leaking, maybe we can get another year or two. But if it is leaking, we're going to eventually have to replace that. So we run into regional ceiling rental ceilings. So if we're talking about Scottsdale and we say, well, gosh, this is an absolutely beautiful home. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's a great school district. Why can't I get double rent than everywhere else? Well, because you're competing with everywhere else. So if you have rents that are maybe 15 or 20 minutes away or 10 minutes away, we have freeways everywhere. People can get on a freeway and get everywhere they want to be. Well, they're not going to pay double to be right there unless maybe mom and dad live next door. Then you have the extenuating circumstances, but the vast majority of people are not. And of course, it depends on the size. That's why we always say you need to decide what segment you are going to be marketing. What are you going to be investing in? Are we investing in student housing? Are we investing in VRBOs? Are we investing in elder housing? And most of the time, I'm investing in family-run properties. I like that first or second tier, so either entry level or just one step above. That seems to be my comfort level. I like that. There's a whole lot of people that can rent those, and they're very, very hard to buy anymore because the builders can't afford to build a 12 or 1,300 square foot home or a 1,400 square foot home. It's just too expensive. So that means that those that are existing are going to go up in value. So I really, really like that. So that's the rental segment. So that rental in your region where you're at is going to have a ceiling. So you need to know what that ceiling is and make sure that the properties that you're buying are within that rental ceiling. Here in Scottsdale, here in Phoenix, here in Gilbert, it's about $1 to $1.10 a square foot. So if we need $2 a square foot to break this thing even, sorry, Charlie, the market doesn't care what you need. They're only going to give you what they're willing to give. So we need to make some correct assumptions because the market really just does not care. Doesn't care what's going on. So when we do the calculations, which we're going to do in just a bit here, we have to make certain assumptions. So that when you come to my seminars and you come to our workshops that we have a set of forms that just fill in the blanks, do some simple math, and it tells you what your return on investment is going to be. Now, but included in that, there are some very, very simple assumptions that you have to make. So you have to do these things and make sure. So this comes in a little bit of knowledge. You need to know what it is that you're buying. And it does go into that. What kind of expenses am I going to have? What kind of repairs am I going to have? So you need to make these assumptions so that you know what your annual cost of doing business for that piece of property is. So we also want to know what the revenue is. This is where being in the business and really being knowledgeable makes such a big difference. Using someone that knows the business, knows the marketplaces, knows what you're looking for, knows someone that's been on the other side, that they're investors themselves or have been dealing with investors for years and years and years. We know what those assumptions are supposed to be. So we can put those into our equations for you. Or if you want to do it yourself, you can. We're going to show you here in just a second. Or we'd love to be involved with you. So look, there's a couple of things that you can do. We talked about how do you get maximum ROI on these properties. Well, you can buy an existing home that hasn't been upgraded. This is one of the easiest things that you can possibly do to make money for yourself is to upgrade the property. Put some granite in, change the cabinets up, put stainless steel appliances, stainless steel sinks, change the flooring out, work on the baths. If it's built in 1990, get rid of all that 1990 stuff and let's put some really nice stuff in and let's update it to today. It might cost just, the average one runs about $15,000, $18,000. But you get $250 more a month. You're going to get about $3,000 a year more. And if it costs you 15 grand to do that, that means the return on investment, the ROI, is 20%. Now, where do you go to get 20%? I suppose you can go down to the bank and get 20%. No, that's not going to happen. So here's a terrific way of you going about getting better returns on your money. Now, we've also talked about being a flip versus capital gains. Flipping is a wonderful, wonderful way of making an income. Just an absolute terrific way of making income. However, to make long-term wealth, you have to have long-term investments. And of course, flipping doesn't fit into that category. So in order for you to make great wealth, you need to season these properties and carry them for a while. Real estate is perfect. These homes go up in value, and after a few years, not only when you flip them, so here's a good concept for you. How about flip to keep? So go ahead, buy a standard house, improve it, get that $250 extra a month, and keep it for a while. You're going to get the value, and it's going to season for you. You can get best of both worlds. We love things like that. That absolutely works just terrific. So you need to start thinking of your clientele too. Now, if you're going to go VRBO, vacation rentals, you can get a lot of money, but I'm going to tell you right now, that is not a passive investment. That is absolutely, you're earning every dollar you can because you're running a virtual hotel. A lot of folks really, they come into town, they have no idea where anything's at, and they kind of rely on you to help them find where the restaurants are, where the grocery stores. At 9 o'clock at night, they find they got to get to a drugstore, they're going to call you. If they can't figure out how to turn a TV on and get Netflix or Amazon Prime, they're going to call you. So just be prepared for it. You are going to earn this. And they turn over. So if they're only there for 30 or 45 days, that means you have to go in and clean it and wash it. And, sometimes you have to repaint it. You have to do touch-up. You have to take care of these properties. So your turnover costs are significantly higher. And, of course, you're not going to get a cleaning lady to come in for, $5 or $10 an hour. It's going to cost you $75 to $150. If it's a good size house, it's going to cost you $300 every time someone turns over in a house, which is every 30 to 45 days. So that could be $1,000 a year you're paying just in maid service to have this done. So there's many segments. I like student, but again, to be dealing with kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old, first time out of the house. They're maybe away from school, they're out of state. You have to be the sheriff there. You have to be the authority figure. You certainly want to get mom and dad on the lease. I mean, we all know that. I mean, that's a no-brainer. We want to definitely do that. But keep in mind that they're away from home, so they're going to be, again, a little more high maintenance, and they're going to break things. They're going to be very, very hard on the property. So your rental cost is going to be much more expensive. Your repair costs much more expensive. Your turnover costs a lot more expensive. You're going to be painting and cleaning. they break things. So even though that you're going to charge them for them, and you certainly want got mom and dad involved, and that threat of calling mom and dad, pretty pretty tough threat. You're still going to have to do it. So if they break the dishwasher, you're going to have to go out and buy one and get one replaced and spend time doing that. So you just have to factor in. Could be good business. It's not something I want to do, but maybe this is what you want to do. So here's another one that I kind of like this one. It's elder housing, and when you start getting into people who are retired, they don't move around. They move very very little. If we get into single adults, older adults, a single person that's in their early 70s maybe, I'm going to tell you they'll never move. So if you get a one bedroom, one bath that's well located, fairly well priced, you'll never get a turnover. They could be there 10, 15, 20 years. They'll never leave. They're just absolutely terrific tenants. So that's something to consider. I've been thinking about that. I kind of like that one. But again, my forte is single family residential. I like a 3 or 4 bedroom homes, 2 car carport or garage with a backyard. In a nice residential neighborhood, close to the transportation, good schools, close to shopping. And I like keeping these properties. I've still have some for 35 years. They're still appreciating, they're still cash flowing. And here's what happens. You get yourself a tenant in there, mom and dad and a couple of kids, and pretty soon they're buying canoes, they're buying bicycles, they're put a boat or a trailer alongside the house. The kids get involved in scouts and soccer. They're all going to school. And you know what? That becomes home. And they're there 4, 5, 10, 15 years. That becomes their home. They raise their kids, raise their families there in your house, pay your house off, and there's no turnover. They just become absolutely terrific tenants. The house goes up in value. They pay off any mortgage encumbrance that you have. It's just a great, great market. Now, any of these can be up for you. You've got to decide if this is something you want or you don't want, but this is certainly good options. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. So we're going to decide what are we going to do? How are we going to decide if this house is a good house for you and I? We're looking at a house, we can buy it, but the question is, should we buy it? So I have a form. So first off, on any form that you do, I want you to make sure you locate it, because if you're looking at 2 or 3 or 4 of these, I'm going to tell you're going to forget what you're doing. So put the address down everywhere in Metro Phoenix. So the median price in Metro Phoenix is $269,000. You want to put $270,000 in there. I use $269,000, but about that's the price. If you want to put a little bit more, you can. If you think you're looking at something for $300,000 or $350,000, put that figure down. Now I use cash so we can figure out what the return is on this particular property. So if we use cash, then our closing costs are fairly nominal, typically well under $1,000. So I put $1,000 down. So in my example, I'm using $269,000 and $1,000 down. So we've got $270,000 closing acquisition cost. But we want to standardize the house. Almost every house that we're going to acquire going to need something to it. So it's either going to need to be cleaned, or it's going to need to be painted. We're going to need some window treatments put in. And if we start putting window treatments in, we kind of want to standardize them so all of them have the same thing. Same with paint, that we want to put the same paint in. So we always have the same colors in our properties. And this way we can keep really strong control over them. But I just put a figure in, and it's going to cost us about $2,500. Now, if you're looking at a property that needs a whole new kitchen or new baths, then you just say, well, look, it needs $15,000. Well, you put that in as part of your standardize and repair costs, and you just put that into an acquisition. So we put $2,500 down because we're buying a fairly good property. So we have $269 purchase, $1,000 closing, and now we have $2,500 in standardization. So we are at $272,500 is what our total cost for purchasing this property is. That's our cost. So we have to start making some expenses here. So you're going to know these expenses. What's the HOA? What the HOA is, and let's annualize it. If it's $50 a month times 12 months, that's $600 a year. You're going to know what the taxes are. Our taxes are very nominal here in Phoenix. So let's say this property has $1,500 a year in taxes. A lot of $270,000 homes are going to have less than $1,500. I understand it. But for my math, let's just make it easy on me, and let's get it down to $1,500. Insurance, again, fairly nominal here. You're going to know what the cost is. $650 a year, fairly common for, the standard house here in Arizona, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, 13, 14, 1,500 square feet. You can find one of these for that. So now here's where we're going to start making some assumptions. We're going to want to put vacancy in there. Now keep in mind your property is, when it's vacant, you're not earning any money on it. It's done. You can't get any rent because it's vacant. So we want to make sure we get these properties leased as quickly as we can. And I'm going to tell you, vacancy will get away from you. You're going to say, oh, I'm going to have this lease in 5 days, but I'm going to try to get a little more money. And before you know it, you price yourself out of market, and 2 or 3 or 4 weeks has gone by. And of course, that's cost you money. It's costing you $35 to $50 a day for every day that you're sitting vacant. Now, keep in mind that our average tenant is running about 4 years here in a single family residential home. So if we're vacant for 2 weeks, which would be about $700, you can take that, or $750 in this, that's right, $1,500. And if we divide it by 4, that means that your annual cost is $750 for 4 years for vacancy, because that's the average tenancy term. So that would cost you $187 a year. We need to factor it in. This is a cost. I know it's hidden. A lot of people don't see it, but it is a cost. Same with repair escrows. We don't know. Maybe you're going to get hit with someone that's really hard on your stuff and break all kinds of stuff in a house. Typically not. So typically what we find is that it's $100 a month or $1,200 a year is going to do with your repair escrow. Now, remember, if the tenant breaks that dishwasher, we're going to go after a security deposit to get that fixed. So that's not the type of things we're talking about. Things just wear out. Garbage is supposed to wear out all the time. We need to have service on our air conditioners, once or twice a year it comes out. We have to do some cleaning, any kind of repairs. Maybe you have to, we have something goes wrong in a house. Maybe we blow a fuse or something. Whatever it is, it's going to cost us about $1,200 a year. So that's just kind of an assumption that we make. It's been pretty good for over like the last 30 years. I've been factoring in about 100, well, I shouldn't say 30 years. For the last 5 or 10 years, we've been factoring in $100 a month for repairs. Should be adequate. If you find that it's not adequate, you can add it up a little bit, but typically $100 or $1,200 a year should be adequate for you. Now, we also have leasing fees. This is the cost. Odds of you leasing it yourself, pretty nominal. Keep in mind, vacancy gets away from you. So we want to get this property leased as quickly as we possibly can. We don't want to sit for a month or 2 months waiting on these things. You lose thousands of dollars. It's just not something we want to do. So what we want to do is get a leasing. So now if you use a property manager, they're probably going to charge you about half a month's rent to get the property leased. Again, it's about the same as vacancy. So figure $187. It's about 4 years. So divide $750 by 4 years. Gives you $187. That's your annual cost of leasing for the property. And then we go into management. Now, I'm going to tell you, I hear this all the time that everybody wants to manage their own properties. I want to save that management fee. Well, let me tell you, if you want to be a multiple property owner, managing your properties yourselves is not a solution. Nobody wants to interface with the tenants. Let your property manager do their job. I have a big portfolio. I don't manage any of my properties. I pay a property manager to do that. It's tax deductible. You can go into these big companies and about $75 a door. They don't care if it's $500 a month or $5,000 a month. They charge you by the door about $75 or about, I figure about $900 a year. You should be able to get that done. Now, if you get a problem tenant and you say, you know what, we shouldn't have taken that tenant, it might cost you a little bit more, because the management company, they find that they're constantly working with the tenant, they're going to start charging extra cost. But typically that's not what happens. So typically you get someone that's going to be there for 4 years. After they've been there a couple of years, it's their home. They start fixing stuff themselves. They get a drip in a sink. They go to the hardware store and fix it themselves rather than bother with anybody. So that's the type of tenant that we have, certainly in most of our portfolio. We don't really have a lot of problem tenants. So if you add all of that up, the typical property, now this property that we're talking about, that costs annually is $5,224. So between $5,000 and $6,000 is what the typical rental is going to cost you a month or a year to run. So if it's $6,000, going to cost you about $500 in all your expenses. So if you're renting a property, so we're going to go through and do some other assumptions. So if you look at my form, we have to make some assumptions. So some of these assumptions are very, very valid. Now, I think this property is going to rent between $1,500 and $1,600 a month. Now, the typical rental in Phoenix, again, it's about $1,500. So why would you use like $2,000 or $2,500 for the rental unless there's something extenuating? You have to go with the basic assumptions. Now, I'm thinking this house should rent around $1,500. Now, if you make the wrong assumption and say, no, this is a much, much nicer house, I'm going to get $2,000 or $2,500, you better be able to back that up. There better be a reason that you can say, well, my house is so much better than everybody else. Just like homes sell in ranges, there's comps for house, there's comps for rentals. And keep in mind your tenant is pretty mobile. So you're competing with someone 5 or 10 miles away. So there's kind of a regional valuation for all of these properties. So you're going to look into the markets and find out what these properties are selling for and renting for. That's why we talk them universe of homes. We get to know in our particular area where we've decided to purchase a property. We get to know that area pretty well. We automatically know what the properties are going for. We can automatically start adding in what the rental increases are each and every year based on what's going on in the area. So on this particular property, I think it's worth about $1,500. That's $18,000 a year. Now we just factored in $5,429 a month or a year for expenses. So that gives me a cash flow of over $12,000, $12,571. So the single family home, average one here, net is going to give us better than $1,000 a month income for ourselves. This is pure income. This is after everybody's been paid. We're going to get over $1,000 a month coming in on this stuff. So on my rental, this is absolute. You can see this on our boards. It's $12,571. We want to divide that by what our acquisition cost was. Remember, we had $269 plus $1,000 plus $2,500, so we're at $272.5. So at a $1,500 a month rental, that gives us a 4.6% return on investment. Now, keep in mind, each metropolitan area is going to have a general regional return. So when you do this, that number is going to consistently come out over and over and over again. So here in Phoenix, it's about 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.4 sometimes, but it's in the mid fours on an absolute net ROI. If the property is going to get an ROI of less than that, then you are paying too much. If it's severely less than that, then this is just not a good rental. If it's negative, just throw it away. Maybe it's a flip candidate, but certainly not a hold candidate because you're going to lose money on this. And we are not in the business to lose money. We are here to make money. So if we look at $1,600 a month, $1,600, which is not all that tough, but maybe try it for 4 or 5 days. If we're in a marketplace where we're getting 5 and 6 rental applications at a time, maybe try $100. But if you get $1,600, it gives us a $19,200 minus the same expenses. So you see that when you raise rents, the expenses stay the same. Raise rents, they go almost exactly into your pocket. They go right to the bottom line. So $19,200 minus $5,429 is $13,371 for over a 5%, 5.05% return on investment. That means that that's a great, great buy. We're very, very happy with that. So here in Phoenix, we do that every single day. Now, if you haven't been investing with me, I hear this a lot. They say, well, it's only 5%. Well, let me tell you, where are you going to get 5%? Where are you going to get 4.5% cash flow on a conservative investment that pays you monthly, consistently monthly? We've talked about the bonds paying absolutely nothing. If you start to get a bond that's going to pay you 4%, you are taking a lot of risk. And of course, the S&P is well under 2%. So this is giving you a lot of income. And guess what's happening here in Phoenix? We're raising rents like crazy. We haven't got enough properties to handle all the people that are coming here. So far this year, that means January to the end of July, rents have gone up 6%. Yes, 6% in 7 months. That's almost 1% a month the rents are going up, and that goes straight to bottom line. Now, look, we're going to be having some webinars each and every week. We're going to be going over these things that we can certainly do. We're going to be having a workshop if you want to get involved with some of these things and start to learn how to become an investor, how to prepare yourself, what to look for in investments, what to look for in mortgages, and how to save. If you want to start getting involved with us, and maybe you want to start going with the certified real estate investment advisor, it's a pretty tough course. It's pretty rigorous. Certainly going to give you a great basis to talk to clients. You can certainly contact me, Michael at michaeldouville.com, or you can certainly email Creating Wealth at West USA or Todd C. Menard at West USA. Now, if you're looking for properties that may be you need a 1031 exchange replacement property. You're selling a property in Los Angeles and you need to get one here in Phoenix because you want to get out into a different marketplace. Give us a call. We're certainly more than happy. We do this all the time. We certainly know what we're doing. And maybe if you need some help or some guidance, we're more than happy to sit down with you and do some consulting with you. We'll talk to you, your financial advisor, your wife, your best friend. So we're here. I'm available to you. And if there's anything that we possibly can, we'll help you in any way. And if you want to, might want to talk about reading my book. It's How to Create a Real Estate Money Machine and Retire with Income. That'll give you a great basis in this. So listen, my very best to you. If I can help in any way, be sure you give me a call. My best. Bye-bye now.